Bella Salon and Day Spa, located at 41 West Main Street in Northeast Pennsylvania, proudly supports Chautauqua Sunrise and its volunteers. More information at bellasalonanddayspa.net. Westfield Memorial Hospital provides high-quality health care to residents of Western New York, offering patients the most sophisticated medical advancements while keeping the ease and familiarity of a community hospital. Support for Chautauqua Sunrise has been provided by WRFA 107.9 FM, Jamestown's public radio station, streaming online 24/7 at WRFALP.com. Low power to the people. Chautauqua Sunrise is made possible by a grant from Fredonia Place, a continuing care retirement community providing dignity in a modern luxury environment. Meter's Restaurant, a family tradition for over 50 years in downtown Ripley, is a proud supporter of Chautauqua Sunrise. Meter's provides all-day dining, banquet services, and custom catering, specializing in pie. From the Access Chautauqua Studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Chautauqua. We are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week from 9 to 10 a.m. Send events via email or call us live. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. And now, from the Access Chautauqua Studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chautauqua Sunrise. I'm Doc Hamels, and I hope you're all surviving the first part of the holiday season here. I looked at my crew here today, and everybody looked like they were in a turkey coma. Pumpkin pie or letdown, whatever. Well, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving and you were with those that are important to you and those that you couldn't be with, at least be in touch with them. We had a nice, quiet Thanksgiving with my brother's family, and it was all good. Okay, so then we had Black Friday. Happy to report that I tried Black Friday once about 25 years, or whatever it was, 20 years ago, went to the mall. There were so many people there. I don't get claustrophobic, but I was like freaked right out. I was telling Emerald I hid behind a pillar at the mall because it was just so many people. It was this humans river. I looked around and said, this is nuts. I turned around and I went home. I never went back to another Black Friday after that. So for those of you that are Black Friday warriors, congratulations. I just can't do it. I just won't. Want to say good morning to everybody here that's tuned in here on Access Chautauqua, channel 1301. I want to say, let's see, I'm going to go through my list. Good morning to the world that's watching us streaming live through Facebook. I know that some of you are watching us from the Netherlands, down in Florida, across the United States, and probably even down into Australia, wherever, because I do have people that watch the show on Facebook once it's posted and through YouTube as well. So we're happy to be streaming live, and if you want to leave a comment or a thumbs up, just let us know that you're there or a comment. Love to hear from you. I want to say good afternoon to all of our listeners on WRFA 107.9, low power to the people in Jamestown. So glad Tuesdays at 1 o'clock that you could be with us and appreciate it. So I say this every week, but I really do have a great show in store for you today. It's a follow-up to a show that we had done earlier this season, and I really encourage you to stay tuned. And if you can't watch the whole show, remember, we always post to YouTube so that we're there forever and ever, or until they come up with some new type of technology and it goes away. Hope you are enjoying this nicer weather. You know, I was thinking the other day, I don't know if it was one less day of winter or one less day of spring at the other. I don't know if the whole thing is just shifting over or winter is actually shorter this year. I don't know. course, we had the snow in the beginning there around Thanksgiving or Halloween, but it hasn't been too bad. So it's hard to believe also today's the last day of November. Justin, you got your Christmas shopping done yet?
No.
No. Okay, good man. But it is hard to believe. It's just, yeah, I have done zero shopping. Okay. So anyways, so I got a few announcements to go through here, and then I want to get to my guest because we've got so much to talk about with him here in a minute. So here we go. Let's start out with slide 15, Jeff. Infinity. Infinity Visual and Performing Arts welcomes a new instructor, Faith Graham, who will be joining the Infinity Strings Department as a violin instructor. She is currently offering beginning violin lessons to students and adults of all ages. Okay, Faith is excited to return to Infinity as a violin instructor after taking several years off from teaching private lessons. She studied under, Nina Karbaka throughout her school years and first began teaching in 1997. Faith is an active violinist in the area, performing in various ensembles for weddings and special events. Her teaching style incorporates Suzuki and traditional methods that develop intonation, technique, dynamics, creative interpretation, and practice strategies with a strong emphasis on classical music appreciation and motivation through the achievement of new skills. Wow. I should take up some of those lessons. She loves her instrument and hopes to inspire students under her instruction to find the same joy and enrichment that playing the violin has brought to her life for the past 40 years. She doesn't look that old, does she? For more information about Infinity, register for lessons with Faith or any of the 40 instructor mentors at Infinity, give them a call at 664-0991 or go to their website at infinityperformingarts.org. Okay, moving right along. I'm going to summarize this. We have slide number 16. Let's just pop that up, and I'm going to talk about this because a couple of other announcements reference this. But this is folks at Infinity talking about Giving Tuesday, and I've got other folks talking about this. But let me see, what's the date on that? Oh boy. Hang on a second. I should circle there it is. December 3rd is Giving Tuesday, and this is all over the United States. And people are encouraged to give at this time of year to your local organizations that could really use a hand in supporting the work that they do. So Infinity is one of them. The Chautauqua Center is another one. I know a lot of your not-for-profits are accepting funds, the Northern Chautauqua Community Foundation, all those organizations out there. So I'm just using the Infinity as an example because they got a nice slide there about Giving Tuesday, December 3rd. And this is all around the United States. And last year, I forgot how many millions of dollars were, $4.5 million were donated last year. So something to think about, especially at this holiday season, okay? Another announcement for Infinity real quick. There's going to be a recital. Music and performing arts students from Infinity Performing Arts will be putting on a holiday recital at the Infinity Arts Cafe, really cool place, on Thursday, December 5 at 6 p.m. So that's coming up this week. The event is family friendly and open to the public. Audience members of all ages are welcome. The Infinity Arts Cafe performance entrance is located at 300 East 3rd Street. Look for the neon guitar. All right, now you might say, well, why would I want to go to recital? This is an opportunity for young people to actually perform and do something for you as a listener and a participant perhaps, and give them support. And all musicians, all artists, all fine arts, whatever your area is, we all need some feedback, and we do this for your enjoyment as well as theirs. So think about it. Also, keep in mind that, hang on, these dates elude. Today, there it is, November 30th. Again, without going into a long dissertation on this, everywhere in the United States, today is Small Business Saturday. Yesterday was Big Box Saturday with Black Friday going to the malls and all the big stores. But I think I read 67% of all the money that's spent in the United States is funneled through all of our mom and pop shops, our small businesses, and so forth. I encourage you, please think about the small business people that are providing services, products here in Chautauqua County and the neighboring area, and support them. Just get out there and support them. It's a great opportunity, and I know a lot of the folks I've seen on Facebook are running specials today for Small Business Saturday. So check that out. Okay, here's one that came through just recently on Monday, a couple days from now. The Westfield Community Kitchen Annual Soup Supper. Say that 10 times fast. Okay, this is going to be from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Adults are $8, children $3. It's at the Methodist Church Community Room right in downtown Westfield. All right, again, they're having their annual soup supper. And I believe they have a variety of soups there, and it's always a big hit with the community. Okay, I covered that one. That went on for like 2 pages. Woo. Okay. This is from the Blue Star Mothers, calling all teachers, Sunday school teachers, daycares, nursing homes, Boy and Girl Scout leaders, anyone interested. They're seeking card and letters, homemade or Christmas cards, to place in care packages that they're packing on December 7th. Last year it was over at the Fluvanna Church. I can't remember what road, Fluvanna Church, and they box up all the gifts and all the supplies and materials and presents for our military overseas, and they're asking for you to provide cards and little greetings from Chautauqua County. And you can drop them off at the Fluvanna Community Church on December 5 from 6 to 8 p.m. or give them a call or check them out on Facebook, but I know it's the Blue Star Mothers or Blue Star Moms, okay? Susan Raleigh is ahead of that. Then we have a slide here, number 17, Chautauqua County Historical Society is having an open house December 9th. This should be fun. There we go, there's the McClurg Mansion, and a little view of inside the mansion. The Chautauqua County Historical Society will say goodbye to 2019 with its annual holiday open house on Sunday, December 9th at the McClurg Museum in Westfield. The reason why I slowed down on that because we have 2 different dates, and I'm pretty sure the date is the 9th and not what I have here. The open house provides an annual opportunity for visitors to learn more about the museum and the Historical Society, and this is free of charge. Folks, if you haven't been in the McClurg lately, it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. And in a little bit here, we're going to be talking about history. Well, McClurg goes back to just about 1800, I think, and a little bit after that. It's one of the oldest buildings in Chautauqua County, and it's just absolutely gorgeous, and they've got it all decked out for the holidays. This particular day, the December 9th, will feature music by the McClurg Street String Band, which is comprised of music students from the Westfield Academy Central School under the direction of the acclaimed Grammy winner, music director and teacher Kent Knappenberger. Yeah, Kent's been here a long time, but I should get him back. Guests will also have an update and a first-hand look at various renovation projects that are underway and those which have been completed in the museum. As in the past years, the event will have refreshments and delectable desserts provided by trustees, volunteers, and members of the society. There's no cost to attend, as I mentioned, to the open house. So again, Sunday, December 9 from 2 to 4 at the McClurg Museum in Moore Park, Westfield. In case you have a question, give them a call, 326-2977. And let's see, 2 more quick things. Also remember that the Chautauqua County Chamber of Commerce has upgraded its gift check program to the Chautauqua, clever word, I can't say it fast, Chautauqua gift card, which has been around for a couple of years now. The number of participating merchants has doubled, and the merchants, since its inception, they brought in $135,000 worth of gift cards last year. That represents direct sales at local businesses, including attractions, retail shops, restaurants, wineries, and a whole lot more. With 150 merchants participating from all over Chautauqua County, you can use the Chautauqua gift card to purchase staple household items or a fun day out of town. The Chautauqua program boosts our local economy, and if you want a card anywhere from $5 to $500, Justin, your dad might like one of those $500 ones. give them a call at 366-6200, 484-1101, or go to their website, shoptauqua.com. Let me spell that for you. SHOPTAUQUA.com. Shoptauqua. And finally, we got our last slide just came in the other day. Christmas in the Vineyards. I think they've been doing this right along. This is going to be held December 14th from noon to 4 p.m. at the Grape Discovery Center. Great venue for shopping, for learning about the grape industry and Concords and wines and so forth. They're going to have our children's craft corner, complimentary cookies for children, visit with Santa, and live music from 1 to 3 p.m. Festive beverages available for purchase. Holiday basket raffle. Custom gift baskets are available. Everyone's welcome. Now, I can tell you from personal experience, I've gone there for last couple Christmases, and I've actually found really, really cool gifts made locally. But remember, we're talking about shopping locally, and people are still using their gifts. I can't remember everything I bought there, but some of these coasters for the table made out of local granites and things like that. They're polished. They were beautiful. I bought some wine glasses there and things like that. If you're interested, give them a call at 326-2003. The Grape Discovery Center is a not-for-profit. Now, before I cut away to our PSA, I want to remind you that if you have a comment or question, you want to just check in with us, give us a call at 716-753-5225. You can announce your club or organization at any time. Let us know what you're doing. If you have a fundraiser and you want to promote it, we do it for free here at Chautauqua Sunrise. So we're going to take a little break right now. Stay tuned. I'm telling you, this is going to be a great show.
Why is my son having trouble in school?
Finding lowest airfare to Istanbul.
No, I'm tired of fighting with my son over his homework.
Home, walk, restaurant. Need a review?
No. He's smart, but his mind wanders.
7 wonders of the world.
Why don't you understand me?
I do. I was trying to show how Connor feels every day. Redirecting to understood.org.
Join parents and experts at understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues to help your child thrive.
So again, thanks for joining us today on Chautauqua Sunrise. And I want to welcome back to the studio someone that I have now read his works since he was here, and I've seen him on TV, not here, but on, I guess, international TV, and author and expert. We're going to call you expert in all things Oak Island right now, Jim McQuiston. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Real happy to be here.
You have made me a believer. You have made me crazy some nights when I've been sitting reading your books. And I bought a couple of the books. You gave me one, so I have a set of 3. I read, and you told me, just as you were leaving the last time, read them in backwards order. And I thought, well, that's unusual, but it works. And I want to thank you for that. Jim, you have, I have a PhD, a dissertation, and I worked on my dissertation, and it's over with. Every book you could get a PhD for. I told you that prior to this. I mean, these are so well written and documented. How did you get started in all this?
Well, I was writing books that had to do with Scottish history and maybe particularly clan histories. Mm-hmm. And my distant relative is actually the premier baronet of Nova Scotia. But I didn't have any idea what that really meant. And I was watching the Curse of Oak Island one night, and I thought, wow, Knight Baronet of Nova Scotia, Oak Island, Nova Scotia, maybe they had something to do with each other. So I sent an email up there. I found their tours email address, and they were fascinated right away. All I did was ask, have you ever looked into these Knights Baronet? So they had a gentleman call me, we talked for an hour, and then they had asked a lot of questions. So I just started answering the questions, and I was fascinated myself with it, and I had no intention of writing a book. I was just so fascinated with the history, and I was sending it off to them, and wow, I just found out this tonight. And I'd sent them so many that at one point, one of the main people up there said, you need to write a book because all of this is just going to get lost in our email accounts. And so I did, and that's the first book, Oak Island Missing Links, and that's a little more general. I don't like unsolved mysteries very much, and I know there's going to be some kind of mundane or pragmatic reason for why that is a mystery, and there's so much history out there in old books and old documents that people a lot of times don't go looking through. So I addressed these larger legends that had to do with Nova Scotia and with Oak Island. And then they had me come up, and that was in 2017, and we talked about in the war room. I was actually the last person to be filmed in the old war room because they had to build a new one for structural reasons and a little bit more privacy. And so even though they filmed me for a couple hours, they didn't use that, but they asked some more driving questions, what can you figure out about this or that? And so
When you say there, is that the Laginas?
yeah,
the team?
particularly Rick, but Doug Kroll and Rick are my two principal contacts up there. And although Charles Barkhouse and Craig Tester, they've helped me out a lot too, and we've had a lot of conversations. But so I started down a more narrow path, and that was book 2, which I see you brought a copy of it today.
I have it right here.
And
As you can see, I've been dog-earing it as I go.
but again, I didn't intend to write that book. All I was doing was trying to answer these questions they had asked, and lo and behold, they at one point said, you've got enough for another book here, and it's so much more specific than the first one. And so I put that together in a book. And so that took it from this broader range of subjects down to a pretty narrow, actually right down to the month and the year that I am proposing that the Money Pit was created. And so they had me come back up again, and that was 2018, to discuss that book and my findings. And that's the one that appeared, I was on April 9th of 2019, even though it was filmed in 2018, during the filming season. And that theory that I presented turned out to be the number 6 theory out of 25 that made
And I
the
was
top
bummed
20.
out. I was on the edge of my seat. It was like watching a football game. We're going through, this kind of like way out theory in the beginning, and they were getting more and more serious. And then they go number 6, and they brought you on. I go, what? How could it be number 6? It's got to be number 1.
Well, I've heard that from other people too, but what's interesting about that is that the genesis of my theory is the same one that the number 1 theorist uses. He takes it to a different direction. He takes it in terms of financing the American Revolution. I don't get quite as romantic with my end of the story.
Right.
But I can't not be practical and pragmatic. It's just my nature. So I'm looking at what would actually be possible. But so when I went up, each time the same phenomenon would happen is that as I was going to go up, I was still curious, and I was getting more information that wasn't even in the book that I was going to talk about. So I had to expand my presentation in the war room to include the new information that I found. And then when I'd get there, they would either have some place that they wanted to take me, like to a private library or something, or to this last time I went to the Nova Scotia Archives. And so even more would be found. So I'd actually be walking away with my hands full of new information.
For the next book.
For the next book, not intentionally, but so after the second meeting, which was the one they filmed, they filmed the first meeting, but that was the one they used. Again, a lot of information came about, and we actually had quite a coup d'etat there, where there was a gentleman that had found this old 1671 knighthood medallion. And nobody knew what it was, and it had French writing on it, so they thought it was some kind of French medallion, and there was only existed a small Polaroid of it, a very, Polaroid's kind of blurry and whatever. So it took months, literally, for me to get a copy just of that Polaroid, and then when I started looking into it, I realized it was a medallion for the highest knighthood in Great Britain.
And that's on the cover of your third book.
That's on the cover of my third book. And so I tracked down who received that in 1671. The other two medallions were, one was still in existence at the British Museum. The other one had been in a Swedish museum, and it was stolen along with a lot of other things, and they assumed it was melted down. So that left this last medallion to be this specific person. It's too much of a story to get in here today, but it had to be that person. Well, that person happened to be a financier of a treasure hunter who actually was in Nova Scotia hunting treasure, and he wrote right in his book, "We continued to look for plunder by land and water and underground." And so the end of that story is that we finally convinced this gentleman to come in. He was very cautious because he didn't want the government to take it away, and we had to get a letter from the government that they wouldn't. And Rick said, "Well, Jim, you just run the meeting." So I said, "All right, well, you tell us how you found it and where you found it, and I'll tell you who it originally belonged to and how I think it got to where you found it." So anyway, it was quite a big deal just for Nova Scotia because, but we couldn't get Prometheus to film it because it was Saturday, and they had worked such a long week that Rick was on the phone when I got to the island, and he said, "Here, you talk to him," because they were telling him he couldn't come down, and I said, "This is a big deal." And they said, "Yeah, but our guys are gone. They worked such a hard week. When Saturday morning comes, everybody's, So the only documentation we have are the photos that were taken in that room that day. But anyway, that was, it's a pretty interesting connection to my theory, even though it isn't exactly my theory. It's not quite a connection to it. So, and basically, the theory itself is that this gentleman was given Nova Scotia. He actually happened to be one of the directors, if you will, of the Plymouth colony. He and his son were on the council. And the Plymouth colony, that's the Mayflower. Well, when they came over, there was only a small group of them, and one ship never made it that year. So the Speedwell was supposed to come over with the Mayflower. So they only had half the settlers they thought they were going to have, and a lot of them passed away from the first bad winters. So here they're sitting there, and right up in Nova Scotia is a fairly large contingent of French. And this was right in the middle of the Anglo-French or Anglo-Franco War, whatever they call it. So they were concerned that they were going to get wiped out. So they said, "Can you do anything about that group that's in Nova Scotia?" So King James, who was the king of what became Great Britain, turned to his friend, William Alexander, and said, "Will you go there and take care of it?" And he said, "Well, you have a New France, a New Spain, and a New England. You give me that as New Scotland, and I will." So he did, and New Scotland in Latin is Nova Scotia. Well, the colony was somewhat short-lived. He sent his first boat in 1622. It didn't make it, but the first one that actually made it there was 1623. The colony was set up in roughly 1628. There's some backstory to that. But it only lasted till 1632 because England and France made peace, and part of that peace was giving Nova Scotia back to the French. So through no fault of his own, his little utopia that he was going to build in Scotland, or in New Scotland, fell apart. And I honestly believe that he fully intended to become king of Nova Scotia. When King James passed away, his son Charles took over, and Charles is noted by other historians as being a little bit two-faced and indecisive. And so I think that Alexander had been a big fan of King James. James was the one that brought him down from Scotland and made him part of the Privy Council.
Right.
And I think that from what I've read, and I've read so much more than what comes out in my books. I mean, probably 20 times for every book that comes out. But it seems like he was disillusioned by England and all of Great Britain and King Charles himself. And I think he thought, here's my opportunity. I got all this land. I've got all these resources. I can set up a utopian place there. I'm only going to allow people that have skills. You had to have, like, be a farmer or a stonemason or something like that to be able to even get on the ships to go.
Yeah.
Because his intention was to build 100 cities around the coast of Nova Scotia, and that was going to be his kingdom. So anyway, once it fell apart, that was a big blow to the family, the fortunes, and a lot of people that he had talked into becoming knights baronet. They had to pay a fee to do it. They wanted their money back because it was, seemed like quite a hefty fee. And so a lot of dreams were broken when this happened, and King Charles, in his sort of two-faced way, was saying, oh, don't worry about it, I'm not going to really give it back, but the French are taking it over. So they were forced out in absolutely by the end of April based on the actual order to leave.
So, if I got this right, for those that are listening, Alexander comes over, claims the land for England and Scotland?
Well, he claimed it as New Scotland, and see, he was a Scot,
Right.
and so, actually so was King James. They both came down from Scotland. And so his idea was to, I think it was literally to create a new golden age for Scotland, to be located over there, away from the plagues and everything that was going on.
And that's what
in
we
the
were
old
talking about
country.
before we started today, is there's so much history and backstories to everything.
Yes.
That we, as in learning in school, we get a snippet and we think that's the way it was. Or, for instance, the Pilgrims coming over, we see them isolated, but they're not isolated. They're all part of this big picture, this big movement of coming to North America. And so he's setting up Nova Scotia, and then I think it was under Charles, that's when he flips it to the French, and then the French come in and say, get everything you want,
and
get out of here.
You have to you have to look at the actual facts on the ground, and they had to leave at the end of April. And so I was thinking, well, what would the weather be like? So I did a lot of studying on the weather. I mean, every facet of this.
Everything you went to school for, right?
Months on the weather, and I looked up the writings of Samuel de Champlain and Jacques Cartier, or Cartier, however you say that, and the notations that they made about the weather. I looked at the NOAA weather records, any kind of testing that had been done. And luckily this year, Rick Lagina had set up a meeting with this gentleman, Robert McKinnon, who has been a treasure hunter and sea captain on Nova Scotia waters his entire life. And so he was telling me that he said literally they would be heading into hell to try to cross the North Atlantic in April. He said, I was up there once in 80-foot waves. Woo. And he said another time in June, as late as June, I had a foot of snow on my deck when I woke up in the morning. He's out on a fishing trawler. And he said two things. He said it would have been virtually impossible for them to cross. And secondly, the best place in all of Nova Scotia to pull into would have been Mahone Bay. And this is what I had surmised earlier, Oak Island's right at the tail end of Mahone Bay. So if you were going to try to hide from weather, you would go right in and go right to the back. And there's Doug Kroll had told me that there was a direct wind tack from the ocean to Oak Island.
So it'd be perfect.
Well, I looked that up too, because I always try to get a couple sources, and I found a map from a yacht club in a nearby little town that had arrows pointing for this wind tack to take right into their, and all you have to do is veer off to the left slightly and you're right at Oak Island. The other thing that this gentleman told me, and this is almost borderline telling tales out of school, except for the fact that I already had a notation of it in my last book, because I just found out about it before that book came out, and I actually went in and massaged the book a little bit to fit it in there. But a gentleman, this same gentleman, he didn't actually find the wreck, but he was pointed to a wreck not far from Oak Island. And the beauty of it was this person in my book who stole the treasure, their family's emblem on their shields and coat of arms was a stag. And they found silverware on the ship with the stag emblem. So, and they raided they had an archaeologist come in and look at all the information, underwater archaeologist, and he said it's absolutely either Spanish or English, about 50% chance, one or the other. And right around the 1600s, and my target date is 1632. So I was loving hearing all that, and he continued to confirm. You know, he wasn't saying, yeah, you're 100% right, but he's saying, yeah, you could be 100% right and he explained different things to me. So the theory is that they were forced to leave. They were allowed to take everything with them, including their gold and silver. It was right in the order. Mm-hmm. They came around the bend. The weather was much worse on the Atlantic side of Nova Scotia, and they were forced into Mahone Bay. One of their ships sunk, which even 2 books ago, I have a sunken ship on the front cover, and because I've been saying that right along. And my main reason for thinking that is they've just found so many parts from ships on
you see it every
Smith's
week.
Cove and in the swamp,
Right.
and so something, they had to come from somewhere. And and I got to meet with this gentleman for 2 hours, and he was a salty sailor, I have to say, but he just told the greatest stories, and that was a lot of nice confirmation for me, and so I wrote a little. In fact, I dedicated kind of a whole chapter to him in my latest book. Going back to the books, so I knew I had to write the 3rd book, because the 3rd book had narrowed it down to what the actual treasure was.
Right.
And the reason for it, the motive, all of that. Originally, I had the date and the people, and the motive being just that they had to escape the weather. Well, it developed into this gentleman wanted to become king of Nova Scotia, and he was willing to partner with anybody. So he partnered with this guy the guy robbed this treasure in October of 1622. And he was indicted and literally waiting trial all the way up to 1625.
And then miraculously,
the king says, "Oh, you got a pardon."
There you go.
And the next day, basically, he becomes partner with William Alexander.
Right.
And I actually found, it's in my new book, but 3 verifications that he spent some of his money on Nova Scotia. Number 1, he bought into the Knights Baronet title, which was expensive, and I actually found his title and I had it translated, because part of it was in Old Scots and part of it was in Latin. So I had it all translated by a translator in Scotland. And also there's a document where he agreed to finance a ship to go to Nova Scotia. That was in 1626, and they left 2 years later. But what I found for the new book is document that William Alexander wrote to him in 1633, the year after everything failed, asking, please do not sue the government and do not harass our financial people. We're doing everything we can to get your money back. I'm like, you got to be kidding. And
it's
so,
somewhere.
So there's 3 indications that he spent money on this venture, and the money that he had was money that he had stolen from it was probably the richest treasure that any Scotsman had amassed up to that point, because this gentleman he stole it from was the top law officer of the whole country. And back then, things were a little shaky, so he, he was, if there was money to take home, he was taking it home, and the list is this long of the treasure that was stolen.
So if I can jump in here, so Oak Island had lots of layers to it, right?
Oh, yes.
And you've got one layer that kind of is built on some other layers, but the thing that I finally could reconcile in my mind is, how are they finding all these old artifacts and so forth? But if you have a treasury that could have been looted for hundreds of years, stockpiled, and then brought somewhere. Maybe somebody dropped something from that. So it could have been, they could have had something in their pocket that was 100 years old.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so it doesn't necessarily mean the Spanish were there because they found a Spanish coin, or it doesn't necessarily mean the Knights Templar were there because you found a Templar's cross. It just means maybe they had treasury from a earlier era and they brought it there. Does that make?
Yes, and particularly with the Spanish coins, because they were kind of like the American dollar is today. They were the standard for the world back then. And all the way up into colonial America, people were using Spanish coins until we started minting our own. So it wouldn't be uncommon to find Spanish coins on any wreck, anywhere.
So for people that are listening right now that may not be familiar with Oak Island and the whole storyline, Jim, can you just give us a synopsis of it's the #1 reality TV show in America today. That's why I'm so excited you're here, and I'm so pleased that you could join us again. So in your own words, what is Oak Island all about?
Well, my actual words is that Oak Island is not so much a mystery to be solved as it is a chance to experience the unapologetic fascination of youth once again. And those words actually appear in the Oak Island Interpretive Center on their wall.
It's a thing that fires up our juices.
Yeah, because everybody who doesn't want to read about treasure on an island. I mean, that's what the Count of Monte Cristo, Kidnapped, all these books that I read when I was a kid. But something obviously happened there. You can't drill down 150 feet and find human bones, or a piece of parchment, or wood that carbon dates to a lot of it to the 1600s. It's just there's no explanation for things like that to be down that far. Now I know there's kind of like two finds. There's the finds that are found what they call at depth, which can be 60 to 180 feet. And then there's surface finds, which Gary Drayton finds
with his
a lot of those. And so I think that the treasure was buried there as kind of a stopgap measure, because they didn't know if this was just a bump in the road, whether they were coming back or not. Plus, if a lot of it was the stolen treasure, they wouldn't necessarily want to take it out. I even have a theory about how they got it out of Scotland and down to England, and then out of England over to Nova Scotia. And so they went to a lot of trouble to get it there to finance Nova Scotia. They weren't going to turn around and sail into an English port with all this, and I think they thought they were coming back. But with France taking over Nova Scotia, and then when they came back, it was the beginnings of the Civil War, the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, where people that were associated with royalty were really put upon seriously, and King Charles was beheaded. And so now they're kind of in a catch-22. They got the French over there kind of controlling the country, and they've got Oliver Cromwell not very friendly to them. Here, what are they going to do? So the last thing they're going to do is go over there and start digging it up, because they're going to be found out.
So over time, this whatever's down there has just been sitting,
and people have been looking for it. And I believe
nobody seems to know exactly where it is, and they've tried and tried and tried. What, a couple hundred years now, right?
Yeah, and I think Captain Kidd, is often associated with it. I think he knew about it. I point out in my newest book, which is going to be out soon, that he lived. The city he lived in was right smack between the city that William Alexander lived in and the city where Al Strachan, the man that stole the treasure, lived in.
Who became his new best friend.
Yeah, and also there's a castle, the title deeds for a specific castle listed in the treasure list, and that was only 40 miles away from where Captain Kidd lived, where he grew up. So if you can imagine in your own area, the senior law official who had his massive treasure and his younger wife stolen.
Oh, I forgot about the wife, that's right.
And you're not going to know about that? Not everybody's not going to know that happened. Yeah. And, so they didn't have Facebook back then, but, So I think that he and Sir William Phipps is another man that's connected with Oak Island in different ways. I think a lot of people were searching for this over a lot of years. They knew something had been left behind. A few people knew a lot a few families, I should say, knew a lot, and a few families knew a little. And a lot of this got embedded into Scottish Rite Freemasonry because William Alexander's, two of his sons were the first and second Freemasons in Scotland.
So, and that's Scottish Rite.
Scottish Rite.
And that's why I was telling you before the show, I'm a Mason, but we're a Blue Lodge, which is more the English, and the Scottish have their own branch of that. Because I was sitting going like, now Jim, everybody knows that the Freemasons started in 17 blah, 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 and you're on 16, whatever it was.
34.
34, and I'm going, that can't be right. Well, then when I did my own research, I realized, oh, that's a different segment of it. So, yeah.
And I think, I write a lot about that in my new book that's going to be out soon, is that I think that's where stonemasonry kind of switched into like more esoteric Freemasonry.
Symbolic.
And one of the reasons was because William Alexander himself was so fascinated with, he was a tremendous writer. He's actually rated up with, right up there with Shakespeare and other people, but he just didn't get the press, and he was busy with so many other things. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Ben Franklin. He's
everywhere.
He did everything and was everywhere, but, you know. But he wasn't noted for one specific thing where he got really famous. So his sons became the first and second Freemason. Another son was the seventh. He may or may not have been the fifth. There's some argument there, and I present both sides of that case. But L. Strachan, the man that stole the treasure, was the third. And so the first, at least 6 out of the first 7, and possibly all 7, were directly related to the Knights Baronet of Nova Scotia.
And they bought into Nova Scotia.
Right.
They were given land leases from the king, right?
Yeah. The ultimate land lease, and it changed, and I can see that they were adjusting as they needed to, because this was all a new idea. But the ultimate lease was, you got 30,000 acres, which, you know, for somebody in Scotland to ever get 30,
that's like half the country.
And so they got 14,000 was to be the town that they could create. They could name it. They could lay it out however they wanted. 16,000 was for their own estate. And so I mean, it was because he wanted to approach this seriously. He didn't want to just take a bunch of ne'er-do-wells or highwaymen or broken men or whatever and go over there. He wanted to take good, solid people and build a good, solid country. He was very much about trying to solve society's ills. And if you look at some of the plays that he wrote, he was actually writing plays as a kind of a secret way to tell King James, you got to watch what you're doing, or you're going to end up like the Roman Empire or something. There won't be there's quite a bit of writing online, well done in thesis form or essay form, about how he was trying to influence the court. And I think that once Charles got in there, Charles was a much lesser king than James, as far as I've been able to tell. And I think he just threw up his hands and said, I've got to do something different. And the choice is to start my own kingdom over in Nova Scotia and escape all of this and take all the good people with me and whatever. So, and he had a friend that was William Vaughan, who also had a similar colony attempt in Newfoundland. And they talked a lot. They were both into Rosicrucianism, into ancient history, Greek mythology. In Alexander's book about Nova Scotia, he uses some Latin words that seem to imply that this is going to be the new golden age and the search for the golden fleece, and it's all going to take place in America. Well, this William Vaughan, he actually wrote a book called The Golden Fleece, and his was the same idea. They were both saying that, the search for the golden fleece is a bigger thing. It's like the search for the Holy Grail. It's for a better
life,
better world. And so they were both intent on doing that, and they both actually failed, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons. I don't think Alexander failed through his own fault. It was the king.
The politics of the day.
The politics of the day that made it fall apart.
So if we could freeze frame that storyline, and people they're listening right now may want to know something, and I'm going to ask the question just one time. Other things were happening prior to 1632 on Oak Island, yes or no?
Well, Yeah.
You hear some of these other theories, the Phoenicians, the Egyptians, the whatevers, they came up there for this or that. Do you buy into any of that?
I don't see any evidence. I know this is kind of heretical here, I guess, but I don't see any real specific evidence that something happened before the 1600s. As you were saying, you know, if because something was found there that might date a little earlier than that, and it's just a surface find, that doesn't prove an entire gigantic story.
Right.
You know, and that's why I like to stick to the documents. I want to know who was in the area. Now, for instance, William Alexander wrote a charter to a gentleman for the area that included Oak Island.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 1630, and the person that witnessed that was Al Strachan, the guy that stole the treasure.
best
So
friend,
now,
yeah.
at least on paper, you have my two principal guys right near Oak Island. You know, they may not have ever physically been there, but you know, so that's as far back as I've been able to find anything legitimate, that it was part of this bigger landmass called Merligash. And that was quite a big discovery too, because there was a specific story, and again, we were talking before the show about how a lot of history is siloed, and people, I'd love to say that, you know, everything is connected. And
Right.
if you only silo out this one little chunk of history, you're missing all the stuff that led up to it.
Right.
Now that takes a lot of work to get all that stuff, but that's what really happened.
And I'll give you a plug, Jim. Folks, if you haven't read any of Jim's works, these are masterful. He even challenged you with answers and questions, and answers his own questions. And as I said to you, I could tell just from reading every paragraph had amazing amount of research behind it. So congratulations on your books.
If you want to put up that slide of the books,
Oh yeah,
that would
Jeff,
help
let's
me.
pop those up, would you?
That would help me explain the
yeah. Can we get those slides up?
well, that's okay.
Well, they'll pop it up here in a second.
Okay.
I can hear they're having some discussions back there. Anytime you want to bring up those slides, Jeff.
So
There we go.
so the yellow book, that's the more generic one,
Okay, that's the
the
number one
general. And so everything was hierarchical, and this is just the way history is too. And the blue book is what I found out about the 1632.
That's what I'm just about
and
done with.
And then when I went up to talk about that, I had found out so many new things up there, and on the way up there that I had to write the third book, which is the kind of purplish royal.
I read that
royal
one.
color
That's got that medallion that the fellow found on the beach, right?
Yes, and so the story was becoming clearer to me because I was expanding out my range of historical research, and so it was kind of like a floodgate this year of supporting information. Number one, I met with that sea captain, and we went up to the archives, the Nova Scotia Archives study. So my last book, I'm calling it Oak Island Endgame, because what I've realized in studying this, I didn't know it all in the beginning, and it was done hierarchically because the first two books weren't even intended. And so I would love it to be all in one book, but that isn't the way I learned it. But I realized that what this larger endgame was. He wanted to escape the follies of Great Britain and Europe and all the troubles that they were having, and a king who he couldn't even trust. And he was going to do it however he had to. And I have several quotes where he's literally begging for money. And when he sees Al Strachan sitting there on trial, sitting on the most massive treasure,
Bada bing.
next thing you know, he becomes partner with him. Next thing you know, Strachan finances a ship to go. And so I think that it was like, I'm going to do this no matter what. And if I have to partner with an outlaw, I'm going to partner with him, because the people around me are what's the king right now?
Yeah.
He's almost an outlaw. So I'm just picking one over the other, and I'm picking the one that will give me the money.
Yeah. Me too did. Yeah.
Then, after it fell apart, his sons joined into Freemasonry, and there was a practical reason for that. His son Anthony was going to be the Master of Works, which is like Public Works of Scotland, and William Sinclair, a name that a lot of people know, he was the patron of the stonemasons. He actually had a charter, and so he argued and said, "Well, I should be the Master of Works," and so King Charles talked the Edinburgh Stonemasons Lodge into letting Anthony in as a non-operative stonemason, so that he could go back to Sinclair and say, "Now lay off a little bit. He's a legitimist." And why Strachan and William Jr. joined at the same time, I don't know, but and it could have been maybe safety in numbers, or Anthony just said, "Hey, I don't know these guys. I'm not a stonemason. I don't want to go into the meetings by myself, whatever." But but at that time, William the father was very interested in, as I was saying, esoteric things and ancient histories and all that, and so you know that some of that had to wear off on his son, but also David Ramsey, who was one of the initial ones, he was very much into esoteric or borderline things. Like he was, for instance, would douse. In fact, there's a big story about how he doused Westminster Abbey looking for treasure. They found a grave that they didn't even know was there, and things like that. So I think that that's when the shift happened there, and I don't know how much of that was just for something to do, or if he had William the father or the elder had a ulterior motive of getting a powerful group behind him, so that he could continue to facilitate the things he wanted to do.
Okay, let's hold that thought. We have a quick phone call.
Sure.
Okay, good morning, caller. Caller?
To hear all this great history. It's a very fascinating time that in the history of our country and developing. It's great to hear you talk about it, and I'm sure your books are very enlightening.
Thank you.
I'm calling about the services with the Chautauqua County Office for the Aging, and specifically the Senior Employment Program. And we have openings in our Senior Employment Training to Work program. Plus, we're looking for workers for different places, and we have our computer training going on. Also, I would like to mention that I'm looking for somebody to help out with computer training in the Senior Employment Program. Somebody who lives in the Westfield-Brockton area would be terrific. There are also other services with the Chautauqua County Office for the Aging, health insurance counseling, and all kinds of other services, which are all free.
Okay.
And the number to call on the screen is 753-4471.
Okay, Lynn, thanks for calling. We're short on time, so catch me again next week, okay?
Okay, have a great weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Jeff, let's pop up the remainder of those slides real quick here, because I hate to not.
Well, this is
We've only got like a minute left,
Oak
so go
Island.
through as fast as you like.
the principal places they look are the swamp, the Smith's Cove, and the Money Pit, which are pretty concentrated. If you want to scoot through,
Keep going.
keep going past that. This was 2017 in the War Room.
Yep, I remember that very clearly.
This was 2018 when we got the medallion. in
Okay,
there.
now I do have a question on this. Is this show scripted?
No.
That's important for people to know. This is real deal stuff, right?
Yes, and if we don't have a lot of time, that's one point I would like to make. I've been filmed probably for 10 hours. I've never once been told
Say
what to
this,
say,
say that.
not once. That's the stonemason's chisel, and I got to hold that this year. That was really great.
And that's 1600s, you figure?
Yeah, well, they said that it has to be pre-1800 because of the way that the iron was
design.
smelted,
Okay.
but it could be as old as 1400.
Right.
And but no, it's not scripted.
Okay, and there you go. And these are some of the finds. Jim, where can they find your books?
I'm Amazon.com. They also, I'm proud to say, they're sold at the Oak Island Interpretive Center too.
Oh, right,
So
very cool. Okay, well, Jim, thanks for joining us. You
We'll
and
have
I
to
can
make
do
it
this
3 hours
all
next
day. We'll
time.
have to do another one. So anyways, folks, you've been watching Chautauqua Sunrise. My guest today has been Jim McQuiston, the author of 4 Oak Island mystery theories, and I appreciate it. And we're going to talk some more after the show here. I have more questions. So glad you could join us here end of November. We got some really fun shows coming up in December, some music and so forth. Have a great weekend, stay warm, and we'll do it all again next Saturday morning here on Chautauqua Sunrise Access Chautauqua.